Welcome back, Smart Start Radio family. Before we get into our latest amazing episode, we have a quick word from our sponsor. With spectacular hotels, amazing theme parks, and unparalleled entertainment, Universal Orlando Resort offers a meeting destination unlike anything else in the world.
A Smart Start Radio, Smart Start Radio. Ready, set, here we go with another episode. Watch as we learn and grow. A Smart Start Radio, Smart Start Radio. Ready, set, here we go with another episode. Watch as we learn and grow. Starting smart is the action we design.
How's it going, Smart Start Radio? I am once again your host, Eming Piansay, coming to you with another great episode for Smart Start Radio, and I'm really excited for this one. I really am, because there's a lot, but we're going to unpack everything, I promise. So a little context for this episode. In late last year, I went to Portland to attend the annual National Coalition of Black Meeting Professionals, and it was a great experience. So many great people, so much great information. People were just so nice and kind, and it was just so interesting. And I left feeling so full and hopeful, because as we know, there's a lot of things that are happening that might not make you feel so hopeful, but it's about finding the parts that do make you feel hopeful, and this definitely did. I felt very hopeful being in this event. DEI has been a very hot button topic across industries just because of the current administration and the pullback on DEI initiatives and all those things. And we really wanted to get into that a little bit and explore it some. And while I was in Portland, I figured this was the perfect time to do that. So I connected with Alexis Braly James. She is the CEO and founder of Construct the Present. She helps organizations build healthier and more inclusive workplace cultures through systems based on DEI strategy, communication training, and equity audits, which sounds fascinating to me. Like, I wish I could just watch that process happen. And so we're going to start there. And then after that segment, we're going to jump into my interview with Shari Dunn. She is the author of the book Qualified: How Competency Checking and Race Collide at Work. We had a great conversation. She gave a great keynote. She's dynamite. Like, I loved her. She was fun to talk to. So we're going to get into both these segments right now. Again, we're going to start with Alexis, and then we will peel back into Shari. So stay tuned, and I hope you enjoy this episode.
For the last 5 years, a majority of my time and effort has been developing diversity, equity, inclusion programming. And that's been through 3 pillars: strategic implementation, which is best described as fractional support. Me and my team have worked directly with clients on an hourly basis, being in the building or in the office in implementing diversity, equity, inclusion. We also do training, and then we do equity audits. And from about 2019 until today, that has been 100% of the work that we do.
All right. So if you were to come into my office, what's your process usually?
Yeah. So when it comes to training, we lead 3-part series, and that's because the research shows that it takes about 90 days and 4.5 hours to change adult behavior. So we can either pull from our training catalog of tried and true common topics, everything from interrupting white supremacy, acknowledging anti-Blackness, microaggressions, navigating conflict, or we've worked with larger organizations that want something custom. And because of my background in education, I've been able to develop custom topics specifically for clients that want to address a particular behavior.
Okay, cool. In terms of, so Smart Meetings is about, events and meetings and such. Where does your work fit in with that? Like, in terms of creating spaces that are, inclusive and thoughtful?
Yeah, so we have worked with conference conveners and meeting conveners around how to create an inclusive space and program. One concrete example is We're a B Corp. And so we worked with Be Local PDX, which is our local chapter, in developing some protocols around their annual conference. Everything from responsive ticket pricing. So there's different tiers based on people's both experience and what their financial capacity is. We've also developed some surveys are both pre and post to collect demographic data and ensure that someone's identity is not impacting their experience at a conference. We've developed community agreements that folks agree to and how to approach those agreements when they're broken, how to hold people accountable. So we've consulted in that sense, but also when it comes to smart meetings, I think it's important to have an inclusive approach in how you consider all the different ways that people both learn, show up, and their needs. And diversity, equity, inclusion consulting really looks at human behavior and how to meet people where they're at.
When did this start?
So 2017. So I was an educator prior to starting my business. And the reason everyone asked me this, and I need to just like write it down and memorize it. And I think where I landed was 2015. But the reason there isn't like an inauguration date is maybe for many entrepreneurs, there wasn't just one day where I was like, today I own a business. For a long time, it was what some of us call a side hustle. Like I was an educator. And I did this in the summer, I did this after hours. And I would say I went 100% into my business in 2019. So that's an easy transition for me. I had started doing equity audits because I could do them any time of day. A lot of it was offline or asynchronistic. And I've been leading that work since then and have scaled my business and grown into different platforms.
Was there like a specific thing that made you want to enter this field, or was it just like because you felt compelled to do it? Because I mean, back at that time, DEI wasn't like something that, I mean, it was, but not to this degree it is now, like where it's like people need to like, you know, either they're talking about it or they're not talking about it for specific reasons. But then at that point, was there like a reason why you're like, hey, I want to do this?
Well, I'm Black. So anybody listening to this, if they didn't know, I'm Black and I'm biracial. My mom is white and my dad is Black. And I have grown up in the Pacific Northwest, specifically the Portland metro area. And my experience was I have oftentimes the only or the first Black person in a space. And so I became hyper aware of justice and inequities and systems. Like I could see rules and norms in a way that maybe my peers didn't, or at least they didn't say out loud because my parents were never married. So I went back and forth between my mom's predominantly white and rural family and my dad's predominantly Black and urban family. And there were two very different ways of moving and operating in the world. Like a really concrete example, I would say, would be around birthday celebrations. Like I spent my first 8 birthdays with my mom's side of the family. And there's a very regimented structure to how a birthday party goes. It's like everybody arrives on time, on clock time. And there's cake and there's food. And when you get food, you're really careful. You don't take a lot. You want to be mindful that there's some left over for others. And then we sing happy birthday song, which is like, happy birthday to you. I don't know what you would call that version of it, but that's the one. And then I remember my 8th birthday, I celebrated with my dad's side of the family, which is very different. It's more of a fluid arrival. When you take food, if you don't take a lot, it's considered rude. So they're like, no, put more on your food, put more. Why are you? And then we sing a totally different birthday song. And I remember this moment because everybody's singing and I'm getting ready to blow out my candles. And it's the Stevie Wonder, like, happy birthday to you. And I was so confused. And this is the story obviously being told to me by my dad, I threw a fit. And I know, I was a little bit of a diva, but that's for another topic. Another podcast.
It's your birthday. You're allowed to be a diva. It's fine.
So that's when I realized that I was living in these two very different worlds, like everything around the celebration. And I became really interested in why there were so many different versions of showing up. And that led me to my passion around history and really connecting to my Black history. And so that felt like a natural progression into systems within the school and the workplace. So my very first business entrepreneurial service was going into organizations, whether it's a nonprofit, government, or for-profit, and looking at everything from how they pay people, how they greet people, what are the rules, what are the dress codes, what's their health care look like, and noticing where there might be people who are left out or fall through the cracks, and then providing recommendations on how to provide support for those gaps.
Who knew a birthday party could launch such a thing?
I know, right? I'm sure no one.
That's definitely not the story I thought I was going to get, but that's still pretty awesome, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, and even to this day, I guess birthdays are very important to me.
Yeah, no. I get you. Like, as someone who's half white, half Asian, like I've spent just personal note. Like, I spent a lot of time trying to like figure out like where these two sides of me meet, and only like in my late 30s, I realized I'm like, okay, now I kind of understand. Like, I'm like this weird fusion, and that's okay. But I look super white, so only I am aware of what I'm made of. Anyway, sorry.
No, it's really interesting. Being biracial is like a very unique experience. And I think a lot of people who don't identify that way don't understand kind of the way we walk through the world and how it's not necessarily two, but it's just multiple pieces of a whole.
Yeah, definitely. But I am curious because since you work in these spaces now, like since you started it up to this point, are you seeing like any shifts in how orgs or offices are kind of dealing with this DEI? Let's call it a fallout, because I don't know what else to call it. DEI fallout. And how is that impacting your process for how you're working with people? And is it like helping or hurting, or what's the sitch in that respect?
What I've seen is a real intentional pushback and rollback, by the sitting president and folks in power. And I think for me, I really started to feel it in March. I was coming off of a high in February of Black History Month and having celebration, and not much had chance to shift yet. Right. And then in March, my business in particular, we stopped getting leads. It was quiet. Clients started to pull back their services that were focused on diversity, equity, inclusion. Yeah. And I also heard from my colleagues the same thing. Less work, less interest, wanting to change language. And I saw, everything from Target pushing back and removing all of their language, and Pepsi and Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
But then also seeing it and feeling it in my own sphere. And it has been really difficult. I think first I had to personally reflect, because there was an immediate sense of fear. I don't know if you remember, or folks remember, there was lists on the internet of diversity, equity, inclusion practitioners and Black folks that were being doxxed and targeted. And so I immediately was worried, should I change the language on my website? Should I remove pictures? Should I remove my name? And so once I was able to get out of my personal safety conversation, it then began about how do I support my clients and how do I need to shift my business for the future. And that has been a 6-month process of really a little bit of grief, I think, and feeling comfortable that the diversity, equity, inclusion approach and way that we have done for the last 5 years does need to shift, because nobody was feeling especially satisfied with what was happening. Like, it didn't feel like systems were changing deeply, and also it was creating some tension at work. And so the result has been me and my business, we've shifted from identity conversations. So whereas the last 5 years really been focused on how to support Black employees, how to support Asian employees, how to support Latino employees, what does it look like to engage LGBTQ, and what do we need to know about those groups? And now moving to these umbrella topics like navigating culture, inclusive leadership, integrating AI, and then speaking to the unique experiences of how our identities influence that within the training. But the top line is really focused on the skill. The impact on clients has been, it's brought the temperature down, because I think during this time when there's such oppositional perspectives, it can create a lot of stress. And the stress primarily, or not primarily, but can have overemphasized impact on folks who already have marginalized identities. So folks who are people of color, LGBTQ, trans folks. So talking about this broader subject actually can create safety for everyone to lean in at work, but also it's focused on the outcome. So less about like who's going into the system or going into the process, but how do we measure impact? And I think that's really been helpful for supervisors, because we should be holding them accountable on being able to support and lead someone of any color. Same with like when you're holding a meeting, it doesn't matter who shows up in the room. You want to measure the experience that they had at the end. And then if there's a particular identity that's having a negative experience, making sure you address it.
Okay. So with that in mind, like what are things that folks who plan events can like learn from you? Because obviously you've had to shift your model a little bit, but even with that, like there's a lot of like a wealth of information that's usable that can be helpful to make events, more engaging and more inclusive. So is there anything like you can offer to our listeners that would be like helpful for them?
Yeah, so I think many event conveners have done this and meeting holders around having a code of conduct and having a process of how that code of conduct gets addressed. Because I think it's one thing to say, all are welcome and this is how we expect you to conduct yourself. But what does it look like to do repair and have conversations when people break those rules or are not supportive and follow the code of conduct? I also think accessibility is a renewed and deepened focus on how to really accommodate folks who are living with physical and cognitive disabilities through both captions and wheelchair seating, sunflower lanyards. All of those things are really important in this new era so that there's visibility. I just think about how we market, because now the internet, someone, for example, who wants to cause harm to an all-Black convention could Google it and see it. So we want to make sure that we have security and safety for folks.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. On that front, I'm kind of curious, like, are you nervous or like, are you concerned, like, because people are kind of reshifting the narrative on what it means to be DEI? Like, are you nervous that like it will shift so broadly that we're going to almost like forget what it actually means? Because like, yes, it's important to like include other groups, but like the primary, like what year was that? When things were
2020.
When things were bad, really bad, there was the push, to like really like put a spotlight on DEI because of what was going on. But like, are you nervous that like this shift because of, the current White House situation is going to like maybe hurt the shift back if that ever happens?
I think over the last 10 to 15 years, there has been a consistent pendulum swing, and largely it is driven, I think, by politics, because there was, from Bush to Clinton to Obama to Trump to Biden and now back to Trump. And I know for me, being Black and for other Black folks, we never forget. We've been on this multi-generational, 500-year journey of trying to get free. And so I'm not worried about us forgetting. I think the larger language shifts every 5 or 6 years, and that innovation can be disorienting. And sometimes it's needed. But I do see even today, there has been intentional rollbacks, and we've lost some of the freedoms that we worked so hard for, everything from voting rights to the assault on, immigrants. And so I'm definitely worried 1000%. And I think as a result of that worry, I experienced quite a bit of sadness this summer. When I normally feel lightness and joy, I felt worry and concern. And ultimately where I landed now, here we are in the end of 2025, is focusing on things I can control. And what I can control is my sphere of influence, the people who are closest to me, and making sure I'm ready and prepared to vote when it's time.
Right. You mentioned when someone breaks the rules at an event, the code of conduct. When you talk about repair, what does that look like?
I think it varies on the organization. I know that most of the convening organizations that I'm familiar with have some sort of certification or membership. I've been to SHRM, I've been to professional groups, teaching associations. So you do have an accountability to that verifying or validating body, which I think makes it easy to have a conversation and say, hey, as this certification, we have these expectations and you broke that. So in order to do that, we need you to have this conversation. And I think it very much depends on what was broken and what repair looks like. But essentially moving away from punishment, which I think we're all really familiar of, which is like you do something wrong, you need to feel pain or you need to feel bad about it, as opposed to like, how can you reconnect to this community and what does repair look like as far as giving back or contributing or cleaning up? whatever happened. And that may be to an individual, to a group. It might be public, it might be private, but it should be co-created with the people who were harmed and the person who did the harm.
Interesting. Okay. So for clients or people who you might be working with, and maybe, because obviously the DEI conversation is weird, like we said, when you talk to people about like, if they're interested in like working with you, but like are nervous about their ROI, if you will, because that's what everyone thinks about. Like, how do you like talk to them, explain to them, like, our model is also adjusting with what's been happening and we're also like evolving. So, ease their minds a little bit that they're working with you is like, will be helpful in the long run of things, despite what's been going on.
Yeah. Well, our work is grounded in connection. So everything we do is in the hopes that people leave our training, our services, our support, feeling more connected to both their purpose and the organization that they work for and the people that they work with.
Yeah.
And then from a business perspective, I think right now, retention of highly qualified employees is like number one focus, because it's really expensive in both time and resources to replace an employee, especially if that employee is one that holds a lot of generational knowledge or institutional knowledge, and people typically stay where they feel valued. And so our work is really working to create value both on the employer side and the employee side.
Okay. So during these sessions that you do, like, what are some of like the top things that you're seeing that are happening that, you want to help, like, alleviate or change or fix, that are like the most, the loudest that you've experienced?
Recently, I've become really interested, and I see this play out in a lot of different ways, around misunderstandings that lead to conflict around what actually happened versus the meaning we make of it. So something as simple as someone missing a deadline or not following through on what they said they would do, and the person who's impacted by that feeling like, for example, I'll get super concrete. Let's say, you and I had a conversation and you committed to having a project done or a deliverable by Friday. Friday comes, you don't say anything, it's not done. And I make that mean that you don't care about me or you don't respect my time. So then I start to create distance or, even more aggressive, be like, why didn't you do this? You clearly don't care about me. But that's where the miscommunication happens, where in reality, or the facts are, simply you missed the deadline and didn't communicate it. There could have been a whole host of reasons, but I tell this story that can make it really big and build it up. And that creates a break in relationship. And I see that happen more and more now after we've come out of the pandemic, that people struggle to hold each other accountable in ways that stay in relationship. It's become a lot easier to just cancel someone or be like, I'm not working with them anymore. Clearly they don't respect me, as opposed to having the hard conversation around we have a shared purpose, we have a shared understanding. So a lot of the work that I'm and my team are doing both with clients and in training is reteaching this repair, resolution, conflict process.
Looking for a way to add some swagger to your meeting? Hold it in Dallas. You'll find 20 plus diverse neighborhoods bustling with entertainment, art, and chef's kiss-worthy food. Not to mention the world's best downtime icebreaker, the famous Margarita Mile. Whether it's a Michelin Guide-recognized chef's table for 10 or seats at a big game for 1,000, Dallas is a playground for networking, team bonding, and after-the-meeting memorable moments. At its heart, you'll find a vibrant, walkable arts district, voted #1 in America. Drop into downtown's historic Deep Ellum neighborhood for a show, or take the team and the energy to the next level atop one of Uptown's stylish rooftops. Get the creative juices flowing in the colorful Bishop's Arts District or any of Lower Greensville's trendy hotspots. Want to energize your attendees with just the right amount of that legendary Dallas swagger? Start planning your meeting at visitdallas.com. And now back to our show. Is that like, is it usually like successful? Like by the end of that, process, is there like a conclusion to said issue usually?
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing is as people having the tools and resetting the expectation has been really helpful. And it does create less conflict. I think it's most effective when we're able to work within an organization and everyone gets this new training, as opposed to when we do public training, maybe one person from an organization comes to the training, leaves with the new skills, and then they are slowly impacting the culture. But when we're able to push into an entire organization and train every staff member on a new way to handle conflict, it fast tracks the ease and the relief and higher engagement, more output happens.
My last questions for you is, what are you hoping will happen in the future? Because obviously, like we said, time and time again, like it's weird right now. Things are not super like easy, and it's getting a little bit more difficult to have these conversations, or people being willing to have these conversations. So what do you hope happens in the next like 5 years or so that is, will help you guys do your job in a way that benefits like everyone who needs it desperately?
Yeah. Gosh, the next 5 years. So that would be 2030. Well, I'd like to see people lean into more in-person conversations and be willing to connect with people who are different than themselves. And I would love to see a less adversarial conversation about race, gender, sexuality, and less divisive, because I think the current political climate says, again, that difference is bad, that we all need to assimilate. And if you can't assimilate based on the color of your skin, your immigration status, or who you love, then you don't belong. And so I would love for us to be able to get together, create more connection, regardless of our race, gender, sexual orientation.
Great. Is there anything I didn't ask you that, obviously we could touch on a lot of different topics, but is there anything that I didn't ask you that you feel is relevant to this particular conversation?
I think you didn't ask me how great Portland is. So if you're listening here, everyone should come to Portland and visit. The ideal time is May to October.
It was cold when I was there a couple of weeks ago. I was like, I don't know. I understand why y'all playing Christmas music, because I'm like, it's freezing. I get it.
Yes, it gets warm. May to October is what I would encourage people to come. It's the best time. But the food is really good here. Did you get to eat? And
But yeah, I got to wander and do some snacking. I was there about 10 years ago, so it was nice to be there at like a more updated time, because I was like, oh, I kind of remember this corner a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a great city. I definitely had fun while I was there.
And if you look on the news, I think the current president is calling us war-torn, but I don't know, maybe that wasn't your experience.
No, I kept expecting to see something, but nothing. I saw nothing. So I was like, okay, maybe it's a different area. Maybe I'm just not around. I don't know. It's not where I am.
Yeah.
But no, I didn't see anything. I'm like, where are the National Guards? I thought,
No, it's just fine here. We're doing great.
No,
it is cold. It's a little dreary right now.
There was no war-tornness as far as I could tell. So that definitely, for the record, I did not see that as a journalist. So I don't know if it's true. Probably not.
Yeah. I live here and I haven't seen it. So that tells you.
Thanks again to Alexis for coming on the show. I really enjoyed our conversation, and definitely check her out. Her website is Construct the Present. I will leave it in the show notes as well, just in case you want to check her out. And now we're going to my interview with Shari Dunn. Just a heads up, this was the first time I've done an interview in like a restaurant setting. It might be a little chaotic, but I promise you there are some gems in this conversation. So stick around, stay tuned, and let's get into it. I'll see you guys in a second. Yeah. So you wrote a book called Qualified, and granted, full disclosure, I'm still reading it.
Yeah.
But you spoke about this yesterday at the conference, and it was really fascinating. So I kind of just want to kick this off by kind of talking about like you, first of all, like who you are, where you're from, your background, what you do, why you wrote the book, why you thought it was important to write the book, and what you're hoping to get out of people reading it and experiencing, your thoughts, your personal experiences, and what you've been, hearing back since this came out not too long ago, in February of this year, what people have been saying to you since it's been out. So softball questions.
Yeah, that's totally fine. Yeah, well, my background is I am originally from Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Okay.
So I'm from a working class background. Both my parents were union members. My father worked in a factory. My mother worked in a hospital in admissions. So like an admissions clerk. In addition to being a Black woman, I am a working class person.
Yeah.
And that is a big identity of mine. You know, it really informs how I think about things in a really practical way. And though I went to law school and I did these things, but my identity is still very much rooted in that. And I guess over my life, I have seen that there were different standards being applied. Different standards, questions asked, insane questions asked over and over about how do you know that? Where did you learn that? Or in physical ways that didn't make any sense as I'm a lawyer at some point in my life, or I've graduated from undergrad at another point. And, myself working in the nonprofit space, trying to lead a nonprofit space, and yet seeing the reaction had to me being the leader, how triggering it was. It was almost like Alice in Wonderland, which is a theme you'll notice in the book I talk about much later, but very Alice in Wonderland-y thing. And, as I said in the keynote, I think the broad public thinks that Black folks and other people of color immediately go to race, like, this is everybody's racist. But actually, people first are very confused. They notice that something is happening over and over, and they're not sure why. And they think they can outwork it or they can outrun it. And then it just keeps happening over and over. And so that had worn on me, especially when I was running a nonprofit. And I saw that, wow, I'm working super hard here and I'm not getting any benefit of the doubt. I'm being pushed to do things no one else before me was asked to do. Like, why is this? And so as I became a consultant, and so I've been a consultant for about 5 years, I do strategic communication, strategy coaching, and DEI. And I was hearing from clients, I was coaching them, someone who works in the arts on the East Coast or someone who works in medicine, the same things. They were saying, thank you so much. So hearing the same things, they were getting the same things on their review. Too aggressive, I had a woman who was Asian American who worked in a bank, did banking stuff, and was told she was too focused on outcomes. How can she? That's her job, isn't it? And I was hearing from people just these strange things over and over, the same language, the same reviews, and they were talking about the same kind of barriers. For instance, I talked to a Black educator who talked about the resistance he got being in charge of this change management thing, and no one wanted to listen. Then I talked to a woman who worked in banking who came with an MBA and experience and wasn't given the promotion over someone who had no experience but who had time in the industry. And there's these mismatches. And so I thought somebody's got to do something. And so I am someone. And so I wrote a proposal for a book, and I have a law school classmate who's a best-selling crime fiction writer. David Ellis, who writes with James Patterson sometimes. And he writes in the area of like law fiction. So I sent him my book proposal and I said, hey, I don't know if it's any good. Could you share it with your agent just to see what she would think? And she wrote me back and wanted to represent me. So that's how I got an agent. So I wrote the book because I was feeling that people were in a lot of pain. And I could feel that pain, and it made me very sad, and I was like, this isn't right. And to your point earlier, people can't say. They're very fearful. They're afraid what's going to happen if they say out loud what's going on. They're afraid of retaliation. So I was like, all right, I'm going to take the hit. I'm going to try to say these things that people can't say because they're fearful, so that they have, that's why I wrote the book. I was like, somebody's got to do something, and people are in too much pain out here. And I thought there was a lot of misidentification. Having been in the DEI space, having read some of the very popular books out there, I thought people aren't getting at the core. They're looking at the symptom and calling it the illness and getting to the symptom. And so I'm kind of obsessed with that in everything that I do. And so I'm interested in tracing it back as much as I can to its originating point. So another part of wanting to write the book was to kind of reframe and address misidentification.
So since this came out, earlier this year, what's the response been so far from people who have read it? Like, I'm assuming it's been a range, but like, what's like the most like ones that stuck with you that people have, either emailed you or
the
called you?
The number one thing is people saying, thank you for helping me see that I'm not going crazy. Truthfully, when I was in London, here in the States, same primary comment. I thought I was going first. And that matters. Like the fact that people feel released of a burden, something they didn't know how to share, they didn't know how to articulate.
Right.
And so people talk about having language to something that was happened to them. They did not have the language. So they didn't even know how to exactly describe it.
Right.
That's very transformative. I had somebody say to me, they felt it was very healing. They felt healed by having read it.
Right.
All these things that are happening are part of a bigger thing. It's not just me. I'm not just showing up and saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing in every job, you know?
Yeah.
What's been the most meaningful thing?
Right. I'm curious, like, since, you know, we've lived through like very different times. Like we had Obama in office and things were like, you know, more progressive and open, and people were more open to this kind of actions of, you know, looking beyond like, you know, just being more receptive. And now we're in a time where that's not so much anymore. But are you seeing anything that is like, you know, shifting in either a negative or positive way since you've written the book that you've been more aware of since you've, you know, written this?
The number one thing is fear. There has been a fear that has swept across the land, which is really contrary to our American ethos. People are afraid to speak.
Yeah.
They're afraid to even talk about the reality of data and the reality of what is actually happening. For fear of being bullied or terrorized or, you know, fired or, you know, it's just, it's something I've never lived through. I would assume the closest thing I can think of is the Red Scare communists in our recent history. Have you now or have you been a believer in diversity, equitable life and inclusion? Like that, it's really something.
And you talk to people about their experiences, whether they're, you know, they are Black or white or whatever, like how much are they willing to share with you because of, you know, their own personal fears of like, you know, sharing too much or like being too honest about how they feel about how things are going right now?
It's not individual for me in interactions, more institutional. I think individually, people are afraid to say something at their workplace. They're not afraid to say something to me, but I think they're more afraid to say something at their workplace. So it's the way the individuals interfacing with institutions, and institutions have kind of gone a little bonkers. Another part of my identity is I used to be a practicing attorney. So while I didn't practice constitutional law, I know that for most private industry, diversity, equity, inclusion, training, discussions is a First Amendment right. You can't restrain speech in this way. And there's also Citizens United, which established speech as a protected class around donors. So there's something weird about this hysteria because it doesn't necessarily have to be. And there's a way to have a discussion in your workplace about open opportunities that does not run afoul of discriminatory laws. And there's been no court case like Harvard in higher ed in employment. There's been no case. So people are stumbling over themselves, and that's fear. There's those organizations. And as you see, consumers are biting back. I mean, Target just released some pretty bad numbers today. And consumers are saying, we live in a diverse society, and to say that out loud and to say that there are still barriers for women and people of color is not anti-anything. It's not anti-white. It's not anti-male. It's just facts. And how do we make a more inclusive society?
You mentioned something during your speech the other day, and I kind of want to go back because it was interesting to me. You said something along the lines of like, if you're someone who's not white, essentially, and your boss will like ask you a question and you know the answer, they're like, how do you know that? That's interesting to me. So I was kind of curious, like,
you saw the room could finish the sentence.
I was kind of curious, like, how this might be a little basic of the question, but like, why do you think that is? Like, why do you think there's not the implicit like, oh, I trust you? I mean, in my mind, and this is maybe being very simple about it, but like, you know, I work for you. I hope you trust me that I can do my job right. Why do you need to verify or that I know what I know?
Well, so it's competency checking in a nutshell, right? That's why I came up with the word. And there's an instinct in our culture to question the competency of out groups. Let's say that. So men are the in group as far as work, and white men are the primary in group. Not negative statements, just a statement of fact. Same group. So as the out group comes into the workforce, first in professional workforce, because everybody's always worked, but first white women, they were held to higher competency standards. And they were questioned a lot more. So Black people fit into that paradigm. people look at the out-group and they say, I have to verify your knowledge.
Right.
And then additionally, we have a historical story around Black intelligence and ability. And we twisted the story that the reason people are in the situation they're in is because they're unintelligent and they need special help, as opposed to, no, we've been blocking. So because we identify it this way, well, naturally, if I grew up with the idea that Black people need special help because they're not as smart as white people inherently, I'm going to ask you more questions. And that's what happens.
Right.
So it's those foundational fallacies plus what happens to an out-group as an out-group tries to come in. Those two things collide to create an entrenched type of competency checking for Black people specifically, but definitely happens to women and other people of color too.
Since this book has come out, has anyone like spoke to you about that like in detail or specifically like their personal experience and like how your book made them feel because you acknowledged it in a way that was, you know, detailed and like...
Black people talk about that happening every day, all day. No, seriously. The reason I did that call and response is because I did it in the UK. I did it in Chicago. I did it in New York. The first time I was doing a reading when I was just putting together my book. When I had submitted the manuscript, a friend of mine here had me do a reading at her house. I did the reading. I got to that portion. And before I could get the words out, everyone in the room said the rest.
Right.
And I was like, what the shit?
Right.
So then from there, I started letting people do it. And that's how prevalent it is. I mean, it literally happens all day, every day.
Right.
Black people, or people ask, how do you know that? And literally just like that. And I've had people ask me that, like I was talking about there about the imposter syndrome. And I had a woman on the phone and she's, how do you know that? Where did you get that from? Can you send me that material? But you let a consultant tell you that imposter syndrome is if you won't admit it, you have a mental health disorder. You let somebody say that and you did not require them to prove that. But you require me to prove what I'm saying. You see what I'm saying? Like it's the mismatch. And so that's just a everyday issue.
So going back to the imposter syndrome aspect of that, like what do you hope the readers, you know, get from your book that helps them like kind of tackle the idea that, you know, they are enough to do their job, even though people might be telling them otherwise and not acknowledging them who they are as people, as workers, as people who are qualified to do what they're doing. I mean, in your personal experience, have you ever, you know, had that thought in your head as well? You're like, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? And is it enough? Or based on like whatever you've been hearing in the stratosphere of the world, you know, kind of pushing back on you, how have you personally, like as you're writing the book, did you ever ask that? Were you ever asking yourself those questions internally?
It is, I've never felt like an imposter. And I think a lot of Black women have that same idea. And the reason is because I've been competency checked at every step of my life. I have to become with so much more. By the time I get somewhere, I know what I know. But what I have felt is marginalized, pushed back, and over-policed. That I have. And that is frustrating and raises your blood pressure and causes you all these stressful. So that I have, but I never question myself. I'm like, I know I went to law school. I know I practiced law. I know all the things I did. So I'm not unclear. I want to know what I'm mostly unclear of. Why are you harassing me? That's what I'm mostly unclear about. And what I hope people take away from imposter syndrome, and I wish I had more time to talk about this yesterday. I talk about in the book in detail the faultiness of the original surveys, the research. Very small research group. Wrong assumptions about even what they were hearing. And in the book, I talk about the fact that the research group, mainly white women, upper middle class, didn't even include poor or working class white. And the reason that's important is because I make the parallel to the case of Norma Ray, which was a movie back in the 70s. You're probably too young to have heard about. But Sally Field played Norma Ray, was actually a woman named Crystal Lee Sutton. And the reason that's important is because Crystal Lee Sutton was a poor woman working in the manufacturing. And she went to work and was faced with, you don't belong here. What are you doing here? Now, if she thought she had imposter syndrome and it was all her fault, then she would have just tried to deal with herself. But what she realized was, wait, this is sexism, unchecked capitalism. And she did something that was still not common in the 70s in the South. They formed a multiracial coalition of the Black women at the factory, and together they launched a union. So what I hope pointing out the misidentification of imposter syndrome can do is help us figure out where we need to work together to change systems, like Crystal Lee Sutton, as opposed to berate ourselves.
Right.
And because we don't have that working knowledge, it's difficult for me to tell Martha or Jane, I think what's going on here. No, you're just an imposter. We just have this. No.
Right.
We need to work together to change this situation, which is causing us stress. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think that we are less inclined to work in coalition and collaboration when we think we have an individual solo issue.
Right.
And I hope that by breaking apart imposter syndrome, we can work together to turn our attention toward collective action.
Right.
So that's my big goal.
Yeah. I always think about this question. How do we kind of do that? How do we work as a collective to kind of bring in voices that aren't necessarily always representing or showing or highlighting or elevating? And so I guess my question for you is like, when people who, aren't necessarily the audience that this book is for per se, but, it would definitely help them to understand, like, there are people who have, these issues or struggles or challenges that aren't necessarily like, they aren't talking about it because it's probably internalized. But for people who, that would, read your book and be able to like appreciate and understand what you're saying, like, what do you hope they take from it? Like people who aren't necessarily impacted by what you're talking about, but could, have friends or people in their lives who it does affect. Like, what do you hope they take from it?
Well, I hope they take from it practical tools for change, because in the book, after you get past the first 3 chapters, every other chapter after that at the end has practical tools. This is what you can do. And the book is really geared toward acknowledging and affirming Black and other people of color, enlightening and giving tools and tips to people who are not. So the book is really designed for both audiences. And what I hope they take from it is the ability in a meeting to say, wait a minute, I think Shari said that already. Can we circle back to that? Or when they're in an evaluation, why has, Jean, who's been here 9 years, not being considered for this promotion, and Tommy, who's only been here 4 years, I hope they can start to bring those discernment questions into spaces. That's my hope. And the media industry, that's a really important one, because I have experience as a news anchor, as an attorney, as a CEO executive, a foundation executive, an educator. I was an adjunct. I know a lot of stuff. But when it comes to booking, I know people who phone it in and they get booked way more than me, right? And they'll get offered a bigger fee. Because they're seen more as an expert or they're whatever, this or that. And my speaking agent, Flock Theory, it's Rhonda Payne. She runs this thing called Flock Theory. It is a Black woman-owned speaking agency, and she has been the primary sourcer for this particular conference over the last 3 years. And so she is a person who understands the clientele and open space for other people, and she really advocates to get her clients out there. But it's not an equal playing field, right? People aren't considering the voices. And so they have to be open to considering. And the thing I always tell people is, and this is an example of competency checking and kind of twice as hard, I don't phone in keynotes. If you see me do another keynote, you'll see the first 6 slides are totally different because I have personalized them to whoever I'm talking to. And you will see my out is very different. Now, of course, there's core structure to things, but I've seen people get up and they don't even acknowledge the people who paid them. I've seen people get up and I've seen them in other places and they say verbatim the thing they said the other place. I can't do that. I can't afford to do that. And I have to bring each time something fresh and innovative to what I'm doing. So it does sometimes feel unfair because I know I'm working harder. I know I'm putting together better things, and I'm lower down on the poll for consideration,
Well, let me just say, your keynote was fire. Like I was invested emotionally in what you were saying. I'm like, can we just keep going for the rest of the day? Because it's so refreshing to have, because a lot of times, like, you go to these events and you hear these people talk and they're okay. But then you people like you who talk and it's like, these things actually matter on a bigger scale than me. Like I'm just a little pebble and you're the mountain, and that's fine. I'm totally cool with that. And it's and it's great to hear other, people's experiences and their journeys because, personally, like, I know I look really white, and I totally am aware of how that looks, and that's fine. And it's really great to like hear people who have experienced way more than I could ever experience and have, been successful in it. And I think it's really beautiful and magical in that sense because not all of us have that ability to go there.
Wow.
And so I really appreciate, everything that you've said today and said the other day, because it really hit a note for me that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, no, people have that feeling, right? What is your background?
Russian, Irish, German, and half
Filipino?
Filipino, yeah.
I've heard, I saw the Filipino in your eyes.
Yeah, I know. It's this.
Your eyes are different. Yeah. People, that's the thing. It's so emotional. When people are filled with pain and nobody is getting at it, and it was hurting me to see people hurt.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, if I could say this for them, if I can put this out there for them, then maybe that could help them, you know? And that's really the goal. Like, I didn't write a book to be famous. I didn't have like a great, vampire leprechaun love story mashup, because that's how you get famous nowadays.
That's fair.
Speculative fiction. I had none of that. And I was right at the tail end of the DEI,
Right.
But I was like, I gotta try.
Right.
I've got to try. And, given the fear that has swept over the country, I think that has hurt me for sure in speaking, because in a different world, just 2 years ago, I probably would have been at every college campus.
Right.
But campuses are afraid. And the crazy thing is, and you heard the keynote, I at no point am talking down anybody. I'm not like, there's no these white people. There's not. There is factual data. And there's factual information. And these things to help all of our, and I make the point at the end of the book is that being intentional, taking your time, this can only help every workplace.
Yeah.
Because as a consultant, just on a general practitioner side, just outside of DEI, the number one problem I see when I go into a company, and I'm telling you, I have been in some Fortune 500s, I've been in some big, is poor communication.
Yeah.
I'm talking about communicating across differences, vast differences.
Right.
Let's say communicating across titles, communicating across departments, communicating across class, communicating across region. People from the East Coast here in Oregon have a tough time. Oh, they have a tough time because we have a very specific communication style here. I see in these companies that this intention and attention that's going to help with a more diverse, equitable is actually going to help them run a better company.
Right.
So this is not some special gift I'm asking just for people of color or women. I'm saying this is going to help it be better overall. So, yeah.
Is there anything I didn't ask you? I'm sure there's plenty of things, but is there anything I didn't ask you that you feel is like prevalent for people who, are in the events industry specifically, like neither here nor there? But
yeah, I think the one thing with speakers of color is we get pigeonholed around race.
Yeah.
And I speak on more than race.
Right.
Again, like I told you, I was a news anchor for a decade.
Right.
I've been a journalist. I talk about how to transition jobs. Most people have no idea how to move through all these jobs that I've done. I do that. I do this talk called The Space Between You and You. I do a talk on reimagining leadership. I do all kinds of talks.
Right.
So people, I think, also pigeon speakers of color.
Right.
And I think that's unfortunate because, again, different perspectives, think of life like a prison. And you're going to see different colors and different facets, and giving conferences and people the same old sing-songy speakers is just not good. And it's so funny. I actually developed, so I have my own consulting company separate, ITBOM LLC, where I do consulting. It's ITBOM, which is LLC. I developed something called Presence, Not Perfection, which is a strategic communications training and coaching. Because people often ask me, like, how do you do that? It seems so natural. And I'm like, it seems natural, and it is, but there are also strings. And so I thought, well, I can also help people understand how to do that, because that is a skill. And so it's like you feel sometimes like you can't stretch out your arms like other people,
right?
In the way that other people can. And you want to be able to, and because of competency checking, that's why you need a flock theory. I needed a flock theory because I need somebody who would believe in me and understood what I was doing. And so without Rhonda, then I don't have an agent who gets me.
Yeah.
Right? It's not that I don't. I want the big agency, but they didn't seem to be as understanding of what I'm trying to do. You know?
Right.
Yeah. And you know, like I bring a quality presentation. I am not fucking around. You know what I mean?
No,
like you're gonna get your money's worth. You know?
I saw it in real time. I was like, she the real deal. This is a real conversation. Like it's not fluff and all that. Like you were really tackling issues that like, I'm sure, I mean, everyone in the room, it felt like they felt it. Like you acknowledged probably, you know, more than half, considerably more than half the audience's feelings about things. And I think it was, like I said, it was in that case, it was very magical. It was like you connected.
Right. And that's a skill. It's a skill and an art. It's an art and a skill to do that. And the no strings, you never should see the strings, but I know what the strings are.
Yeah.
Right? It's like a magic trick.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You don't know it's magic. You just know like, ooh, but I know the trick behind the magic. And so that is actually another issue of competency checking. I think we talked about that, and I touched on it very briefly, is that Black people, I think, and I think Black people in particular, when we're good at something like that, people think we're just natural or lucky or it's natural, that kind of language, and they don't see work or intelligent design behind it. And it's like, yeah, it's a combination of things. Yes, I might be I am a talker generally, but there's also a design. You know, so that's kind of.
Well, Shari Dunn, thank you so much for this conversation. This was fun. I really enjoyed this.
Well, thank you for asking me. I feel honored to be interviewed. Of course.
Thank you again to Alexis and Shari. These were great conversations. I felt smarter listening to them. Like they had so many things to say, and I felt very honored to be able to speak to them on DEI and all the work that they've been doing and what they've been through. It was a real honor. So again, thank you both of them for taking the time to speak to me. And thank you all for being here. I look forward to seeing you guys next time. See you guys later. Bye.
That's Smart Star Radio. Smart Star Radio. Ready, set, here we go with another episode. Watch as we learn and grow. That's Smart Star Radio. Smart Star Radio. Ready, set, here we go with another episode. Watch as we learn and grow. Starting smart is the action we design. Meeting of the minds, how to better use our time. Leading, interceding, proceeding, they divine. It's believing, they conceding, so it goes on.
You've been listening to Smart Start Radio, a Smart Meetings production. Interested in being our next guest? Connect with us at editor@smartmeetings.com.